It's cool out there, Brian, but the sun, it's coming up, and as it is, you may want to grab the shades along with that layer before you head out that door. Live look outside here as you're going across downtown Sacramento from the Exchange Hotel. You can clearly see that the sun is brightening the horizon up. And we don't have much in the way of any clouds out there, but it is certainly cool. And in fact, Sacramento coming in about 2 degrees cooler than this time yesterday morning. The bigger drops we feel, though, are going to be in the mountains. We're about 15 to 18 degrees colder in South Lake Tahoe and Truckee, with temperatures sliding down below the freezing mark in the mountains right now. In fact, it's just 30 degrees at South Lake Tahoe. We're in the upper 20s in Truckee. If you're heading out that door in Auburn and Placerville, you definitely want to grab that jacket. We're in the mid to upper 40s. You get down into the valley floor, we have low 50s right now in Modesto, Stockton, down to mid 40s in Fairfield, and 53 right now in Yuba City. The difference between yesterday and today in terms of wind, of course, it was a gustier start to the morning yesterday. Look how flat these winds are now. We've also shifted directions with the wind, so we have more of a north flow coming across the valley, and that should be enough to bring temperatures up a few degrees this afternoon, but nothing that's going to be an abrupt change. By lunchtime, Valley Planner in the low 70s with a high today at just about 80 degrees. Coming up in my full forecast, I'll talk about what's ahead for the rest of the work week. Deirdre, back to you.
All right, thank you. Happening today, the mental evaluation of Carlos Dominguez is going to be released in court. Now, he is the man who is suspected of a deadly stabbing spree that happened in Davis. The evaluation will determine if he's competent to stand trial. Dominguez is facing multiple charges, including the murders of David Breaux and UC Davis student Kareem Abu Nujum and the attempted murder of Kimberly Guillory. Meanwhile, the man who was accused of killing 2 people in Del Paso Heights is scheduled to be in court today. A 34-year-old Durbin Paguada Vasquez is facing charges in the deaths of 2 people. A man and a woman were killed in a drive-by shooting that happened on Clay Street. Happening today, Sacramento City Council is going to be talking about some of the findings of the recent audit of the city's police department.
Mike Cherry joins us live in studio with a look at what they will consider.
Yeah, good morning. All in an effort to provide the community with transparency, the Sacramento Police Department went through an audit regarding any issues that it's had over the past 3 years. Now, that audit, released earlier this year by the city's Office of Public Safety Accountability, reviewed more than 100 complaint cases of misconduct from 2020 to 2022. Now, those cases had allegations of improper search and seizure done by officers. The audit focused on Fourth Amendment violations during those searches, and while a majority of the cases found there was no violation, there was a difference between which cases had violations between the Accountability Office and Sacramento Police. Sac PD found that 17 cases contained Fourth Amendment violations, while the office found 38. Now, in the 38 cases, the Accountability Office says the most common violation of the Fourth Amendment was actually unlawful pat-down and search. They also found that unlawful detention during traffic stops was prevalent. Now, in some cases, officers violated state and federal laws by improperly searching for seizing cell phones from citizens. They describe one example when an elderly woman actually recorded officers arresting her son when one officer grabbed her and twisted her arm until she lost control of her phone. Now, the office did make 19 recommendations. That includes a suggestion for Sacramento Police to update its search and seizure manual. They say it has not been updated since 2007, and also develop a clear policy outlining procedures for the search and seizure of cell phones. Now, the findings are expected to be discussed when the City Council meeting gets underway at 5 o'clock tonight. Deirdre?
All right, thank you. Happening tonight, the Stockton City Council is once again going to be talking about whether or not to fly the pride flag over City Hall. Now, at a meeting last week, council members deadlocked 3-3 with 1 council member absent, and they did agree to vote on it again today. Now, if approved, the flag would not start flying would start flying tomorrow, and then it would be up until next Wednesday. The city has flown the pride flag during June for the last 4 years. That meeting will get underway at 4 o'clock tonight. Cars doing donuts in the middle of the street and speeding through parking lots. That's the kind of thing, reckless driving, that the city of Sacramento is trying to crack down on, specifically in the Natomas area. Here's a video that was sent to KCRA 3, and you can see a recent sideshow. This was at the West Shore community in Natomas. Cars spinning and speeding, the crowd there gathering to watch. And that's why dozens of community members met with city officials and also law enforcement last night to talk about these sideshows and what to do about them. City Council member Lisa Kaplan says she's working on some new ordinances to try to crack down.
We're trying to maintain a level of, comfort in living, so we don't really care to have this and I think that stronger measures need to be taken.
It's looking at how do we re-engineer some of our most dangerous streets, how do we add in dots, how do we increase fines, impound vehicles, and I think it's going to be a multi-level approach. It's not just one answer.
Kaplan says that her sideshow ordinances are just in the beginning phases, so they would need to be reviewed by the city's Law and Legislation Committee and then would go in front of the City Council.
Well, the U.S. and China's relationship is on the mend after days of high-level talks between the Secretary of State and the Chinese president. Now, the summit was delayed over that spy balloon incident and now puts the two countries just past a low point. KCRA3's Amy Liu is in Washington this morning with more on what this means for the two countries.
Well, the U.S. and China showed willingness to hold more talks, with one major communication goal still not done: direct military-to-military contact.
Good afternoon. 主席好.
A handshake between top leaders, the U.S. and China taking the first step repairing a relationship on a downward spiral. A trip rescheduled by the infamous Chinese spy balloon. Secretary of State Antony Blinken sat down with Chinese President Xi Jinping.
We had a robust conversation about regional and global challenges. That includes Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine.
The discussion touching on China's support for Russia and the war, threats over Taiwan, and military intercepts near the South China Sea and Taiwan Strait.
It won't be long before somebody gets hurt. That's the concern with these unsafe and unprofessional intercepts. They can lead to misunderstandings. They can lead to miscalculations.
But with sanctions against China and American security still at risk, military-to-military contact is off the table, critical for both countries to avoid future conflict.
It's in our mutual interest to do so. We did all of that on this trip, but progress is hard.
And the White House plans to continue talks with China when appropriate, likely in the form of a phone call between President Biden and President Xi. In Washington, I'm Amy Liu, KCRA3 News.
Amy, thanks. 6:09 now. Happening right now, it's a race to the bottom of the sea to find a missing sub taking tourists to Titanic. The U.S. Coast Guard is now leading the search after the sub did not return on Sunday. NBC News has learned that 5 people are on board that missing vessel. At this point, not exactly sure how many are tourists and how many are crew. The Coast Guard says that they had about 96 hours of oxygen available on board in case there was an emergency. As of this morning, they have anywhere between 50 and 60 hours left in theory. The Canadian Coast Guard is now assisting with that search. So the tourists apparently paid up to about $250,000 apiece for this opportunity to go 2 miles or whatever, however far it is down. 2 hours, 2 hours of like submersing.
Yeah.
And the last ping was from above Titanic, but that's the last thing they know about.
Yeah, and they say now real risk is hypothermia.
Yeah.
Imagine how cold that water is down there. So, and then once they find it, how do they get it out?
I don't know.
And they're still kind of asking themselves that question too. So wow, TikTok, it's pretty scary.